On a busy street corner in downtown Brooklyn, 78-year-old Margaret Wilson slowly makes her way through the farmer's market with her wire shopping cart. She's been coming here every Thursday for decades, knowing most of the vendors by name. Today, she accidentally bumps into a temporary barricade, knocking it over. Two officers, both rookies in their first year, approach her aggressively despite the minor nature of the incident. Officer Jenkins, a 24-year-old rookie with just 8 months on the force, approaches Margaret with the kind of rigid authority that often masks inexperience. His morning had been particularly rough, a domestic dispute call gone wrong, and a mountain of paperwork left him feeling on edge. His pressed blue uniform and polished badge gleam in the morning sun, contrasting sharply with his thunderous expression. "Ma'am, you just destroyed city property," he barks, his hand immediately gripping Margaret's frail arm. His fingers press into her cardigan, leaving wrinkles in the soft lavender wool she'd knitted herself last winter. Margaret winces, her arthritis flaring under his grip. Her reading glasses slip down her nose as she looks up at him, confusion clouding her pale blue eyes. Officer Martinez, slightly older but equally inexperienced, positions himself on Margaret's other side. His stance is wide, tactical, as if preparing to subdue a dangerous suspect rather than a grandmother who barely reaches his shoulder. The shadow of his imposing figure falls across Margaret's face as he moves closer, causing her to shrink into herself. I didn't mean to," Margaret's voice quavers, her words coming out in short, frightened bursts. "The cart just caught the edge of—" She tries to gesture with her free hand, but Officer Jenkins tightens his grip, causing her to gasp softly. The shopping list she'd carefully written that morning flutters from her pocket to the ground, landing in a small puddle from the market's recently watered produce displays. Martinez reaches for her other arm, his hand closing around her wrist. "Turn around, ma'am," he commands, his voice carrying that dangerous mix of authority and adrenaline. The two officers begin to pull her in different directions, their movements uncoordinated and rough. Margaret's orthopedic shoes scuff against the concrete as she struggles to keep her balance. The morning sun catches the tears welling in her eyes as she tries one more time to explain. "Please, officers, I'm just here for my weekly shopping. I've been coming to this market for longer than you've been—" Her words are cut off by a sharp tug toward the patrol car, the officer's patience wearing dangerously thin. The temporary barricade lies forgotten on the ground, a plastic piece of city property worth far less than the dignity being stripped from an elderly woman on this otherwise peaceful Thursday morning. The farmer's market, usually a peaceful melody of friendly chatter and bustling commerce, transforms into an amphitheater of growing outrage. Sarah Chen, a young mother who frequently chats with Margaret at the tomato stand, is the first to pull out her phone. Her hands shake with anger as she steadies her iPhone 15, making sure to capture every second of the unfolding injustice. Her 3-year-old daughter clutches her leg, sensing the tension in the air. "Hey, leave her alone!" "That's Margaret. She's here every week," shouts Roberto, the organic honey vendor who always saves Margaret's favorite lavender honey. He steps forward from behind his stall, his white apron still sticky from the morning sampling. Other vendors begin abandoning their posts, forming a protective semicircle around the scene. The morning air grows thick with tension as more phones rise into the air like a forest of digital witnesses. "This isn't right. She's someone's grandmother." The voice belongs to James Thompson, a construction worker on his coffee break, his yellow hard hat visible above the growing crowd. His deep baritone carries across the market square, drawing even more attention. A group of high school students on their way to class stop dead in their tracks, immediately beginning to live stream the incident to their social media accounts. The crowd swells from dozens to perhaps 100 people within minutes. Their collective murmur grows into a chorus of protest, punctuated by sharp gasps as Officer Jenkins roughly handles Margaret. A nearby business owner, Lisa Martinez, no relation to the officer, rushes out of her bookstore with her phone already dialing 911 to report the officer's behavior. "Yes, I need to report 2 officers who are assaulting an elderly woman," she says loudly, intentionally making her voice carry. Margaret's wire shopping cart, a faithful companion through countless market visits, catches on Officer Martinez's boot and tips over. The sound of her carefully selected produce hitting the pavement acts like a match to gasoline. Apples roll across the concrete, some getting crushed under hurrying feet. The bunch of fresh daisies she'd chosen to brighten her kitchen table lies trampled, white petals scattered like confetti at a tragedy. The crowd's reaction intensifies. A woman in yoga gear kneels to retrieve Margaret's spilled groceries, tears streaming down her face. She buys flowers every Thursday for her late husband's photo, she informs those nearby, her voice breaking. This intimate detail spreads through the crowd like wildfire, transforming their general concern into personal outrage. Phones record everything: the trembling of Margaret's hands, the aggressive stance of the officers, the scattered produce, and most importantly, the tears now flowing freely down Margaret's weathered cheeks. Some begin chanting, "Let her go," while others call out badge numbers and physical descriptions of the officers. A law student in the crowd begins narrating the various violations she's witnessing, her voice clear and professional, perfect for the video evidence being gathered. The air becomes electric with the kind of collective moral certainty that makes authorities nervous, but the officers, perhaps too inexperienced or too proud to back down, only grip Margaret tighter. Mike Tyson sits in Carmine's, an upscale Italian restaurant just around the corner, discussing a charity project with his business manager. He's dressed sharply in a black fitted suit, his signature face tattoo catching the light as he turns his head toward the growing commotion outside. At first he tries to ignore it, but there's something in the rising chorus of voices that triggers his finely tuned instinct for trouble. "Hold that thought," he says to his manager, rising from the table with the fluid grace that once made him the most feared boxer in the world. As he approaches the restaurant's wide front window, the sound of the crowd grows clearer. His expression darkens as he catches fragments of their shouts. "Elderly woman," "police brutality," "somebody help her." Without hesitation, Tyson strides toward the door, his presence immediately commanding attention from other diners. The maitre d' moves to intercept him. There's still the matter of the untouched pasta and unsigned check. But one look at Tyson's determined expression makes him step aside. The former heavyweight champion's bodyguard quickly falls in behind him, already knowing from experience that there's no talking his boss out of this. The summer air hits Tyson like a heavyweight punch as he exits the restaurant. He stands still for a moment, his fighter's instincts helping him assess the situation. The crowd parts unconsciously as he moves forward, creating a path without him having to say a word. Some people recognize him immediately, their phones swiveling from the police confrontation to capture his approach. Whispers ripple through the crowd. "Is that Mike Tyson?" His walk is purposeful but measured, not the aggressive stride of his boxing days, but the controlled movement of a man who has learned to use his power judiciously. His famous lisp becomes apparent as he mutters "excuse me" to people in his path, each step bringing him closer to the center of the confrontation. The tribal tattoo on his face, along with his still impressive physique, creates an aura of contained power that makes even the officers do a double-take. The crowd, sensing the shift in dynamics, falls into an anticipatory hush. Phones continue recording, but their owners are now filming in absolute silence, understanding they're about to witness something extraordinary. Tyson's eyes, once described by opponents as the most intimidating in boxing, take in every detail of the scene. The scattered produce, Margaret's tears, the officer's aggressive postures. His jaw tightens visibly, a glimpse of the old Iron Mike showing through his usually gentle demeanor. As he comes to a stop just a few feet from the officers, his presence seems to fill the entire market square. The morning sun casts his shadow long across the pavement, reaching all the way to Margaret's feet. In this moment, he's no longer just the former champion or the celebrity. He's the embodiment of justice arriving exactly when needed. "What do you think you're doing to this lady?" Tyson's distinctive voice cuts through the tension like a knife through butter. Though his famous lisp is present, there's nothing soft about his tone. He takes another measured step forward, his hands raised diplomatically at chest level, a gesture he learned during his own encounters with law enforcement. The morning sun glints off his cufflinks as he keeps his movements deliberately slow and non-threatening. Officer Jenkins' grip on Margaret's arm loosens slightly as he processes the surreal situation before him. Here's Mike Tyson, the Mike Tyson, standing in front of him in a perfectly tailored black suit worth more than 3 months of his salary. The young officer's Adam's apple bobs as he swallows hard, his rookie bravado evaporating under Iron Mike's steady gaze. "This is police business, sir." Officer Martinez attempts to assert authority, but his voice cracks slightly. Even with his police training, he's acutely aware that he's addressing a man who once knocked out professional fighters with a single punch. Sweat begins to bead on his forehead despite the mild morning temperature. Tyson takes another step closer, his expression a mixture of controlled anger and genuine concern. "I've been watching for the last minute," he states, his voice carrying the weight of his conviction. "This lady knocked over a plastic barrier. By accident." He emphasizes the last two words, letting them hang in the air. "That's all she did. Now you're treating her like she's Sonny Liston in his prime." Margaret, still trembling between the officers, looks up at Tyson with a mixture of hope and confusion. A tear rolls down her cheek, catching in the wrinkles that tell the story of her 78 years. Tyson notices this detail and his expression softens momentarily as he addresses her directly. "It's okay, ma'am. Everything's going to be all right now." Turning back to the officers, his voice takes on an edge of steel. "I'm calling your supervisor right now, and I'm not going anywhere until they arrive." He pulls out his phone, his fingers surprisingly nimble for a former boxer as he dials. "And trust me, the whole world's gonna see this. Every single second is being recorded by about 50 people right now." The crowd murmurs in agreement, phones still raised high. Tyson continues, his words measured but forceful. "You both need to take your hands off this lady, right now. It's not a request, and everyone present knows it. I've seen enough injustice in my life to know it when I see it. This stops here." Officer Jenkins is the first to release his grip, his training finally kicking in as he realizes the severity of the situation. Martinez follows suit a moment later, and Margaret sways slightly, unsteady on her feet. Tyson immediately moves to support her, his massive frame somehow becoming gentle as he helps her regain her balance. His hand, once famous for devastating knockouts, now steadies her elbow with the tenderness of a concerned grandson. "My supervisor is already on their way," Officer Jenkins manages to say, his earlier bravado replaced by barely concealed panic. Both officers take several steps back, creating space between themselves and Margaret, while maintaining what they hope appears to be a professional demeanor. Tyson keeps one reassuring hand on Margaret's shoulder as he speaks into his phone, his voice carrying authority that no police badge could match. "Yes, I need to report two officers at the downtown farmers market. Their badge numbers are—" He pauses, eyes narrowing as he reads the numbers aloud, making both officers flinch. "And yes, I'll wait here personally until you arrive." Within 7 minutes of Tyson's call, 3 police vehicles arrive at the farmers market, their lights flashing but sirens silent. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran of the force, steps out of the lead car. Her salt and pepper hair is pulled back in a tight bun, and her face bears the stern expression of someone who's seen too many young officers make poor decisions. She takes in the scene before her. Mike Tyson standing protectively beside an elderly woman, 2 nervous rookie officers, and a crowd of citizens with phones still recording every moment. "Mr. Tyson," she acknowledges with a professional nod before turning to Margaret. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" Her voice carries genuine concern as she notices the red marks on Margaret's arms where the officers had gripped her. Margaret shakes her head, though she's still trembling slightly. A paramedic team arrives anyway, standard procedure for any incident involving potential injury to a civilian. Sergeant Rodriguez pulls officers Jenkins and Martinez aside, her quiet words carrying the weight of imminent consequences. "Turn in your badges and weapons. You're both on administrative leave, effective immediately." The young officers begin to protest, but she cuts them off with a sharp gesture. "The department's Internal Affairs Division will be reviewing all witness footage. We have over 50 videos of this incident, and I'm sure they will be on social media within the hour." Meanwhile, Tyson has spotted Margaret's overturned shopping cart and scattered groceries. "Let's get your shopping sorted out, ma'am," he says gently, kneeling down despite his expensive suit to gather the spilled produce. The crowd, sensing the moment, joins in. Sarah Chen, the young mother who first started recording, picks up bruised apples. Roberto, the honey vendor, brings over a fresh jar of Margaret's favorite lavender honey, refusing any payment. "These vegetables aren't good anymore," Tyson observes, examining a crushed tomato. He turns to Roberto, pulling out his wallet. "What's good today?" "I want to replace everything." His generosity sparks a chain reaction. Other vendors step forward, offering their best produce. Within minutes, Margaret's cart is filled with fresh vegetables, fruits, and flowers, more than she had originally planned to buy. As the crowd begins to disperse, Tyson insists on escorting Margaret home. "I'm headed this way anyway," he lies smoothly, taking control of her shopping cart. As they walk, Margaret gradually relaxes, her natural warmth returning. She tells him about her grandchildren, showing him photos from her worn wallet. Tyson listens intently, occasionally sharing stories about his own kids. The incident doesn't end there. By evening, the videos have gone viral. Tyson saves grandma trends on social media, but more importantly, the incident sparks a serious discussion about police training and community relations. The department announces a comprehensive review of its training procedures, particularly regarding interactions with elderly citizens. 2 weeks later, Tyson receives an invitation to Sunday dinner at Margaret's small apartment. He arrives with a bouquet of daisies. He remembered they were her favorite from the market incident. Her small dining room table is set with her best china, and the smell of pot roast fills the air. Her grandchildren, initially starstruck, soon warm up to him as he shows them basic boxing stances and tells cleaned-up versions of his famous fights. This becomes a monthly tradition. Margaret teaches Tyson her secret recipe for apple pie, and he ensures she never has trouble at the farmer's market again, though she hardly needs his protection now. The vendors greet her like a celebrity, and even the new beat officers tip their caps respectfully when she passes. As for Officers Jenkins and Martinez, they undergo extensive retraining and community service, specifically working with elderly residents. The incident becomes a mandatory case study in the police academy's training curriculum, teaching future officers about the importance of de-escalation and respectful community interaction. The story becomes part of local legend, retold at the farmers market for years to come. How one Thursday morning, an unlikely friendship formed between a former heavyweight champion and a grandmother, reminding everyone that justice sometimes arrives in unexpected forms.